Hello and welcome to episode 17 of Stitched in Sweden. I'm Maria and you can find me on Ravelry and Instagram as mmonska. The show notes for this episode and all the other episodes can be found at stitchedinsweden.blogspot.com, and the Ravelry group is also called Stitched in Sweden. So welcome to episode 17. Today I'm going to tell you about this week in Stockholm, some things I've been working on, including 3 new cast-ons this week. I do not have any finished projects, but I do have a technique tip, and I will answer a question later on in the show. So this week in Stockholm, it has been a very rainy week. We have had 3 solid days of solid rain. But everything is really green and lovely, so that's nice. Hopefully now, if it rains now, it won't rain in the summer later, like when my parents are here. But yes, it's been a very rainy week, and Thomas was gone from Thursday to Sunday this week. It was kind of a long weekend because Thursday was a holiday here, and so I had a lot of time to knit and no reason to go outside because it was very rainy. So I did spend a good amount of time knitting and crafting, catching up on some podcasts, and also did a big apartment clean, so that felt good. I did do a trip to IKEA on Thursday, which was a really bad idea since it was a holiday. And actually you call it IKEA in Swedish because I in English is pronounced E in Swedish. So, fun fact. Anyway, I did get some yarn in the mail this week that I had ordered last week, and I also got 2 really nice packages from some viewers of the show. So I will share those with you now. First, I did order some yarn from Love Knitting. I ordered some of the plain white sock yarn that I'm using for my hexagon blanket that I'll share with you later. I ordered 3 more balls of it. It's up there. I'm not going to share that with you again. It's just the plain white. But I also did order some Drops Baby Alpaca Silk, and I got it in 2 different colorways. So this is the color, I think it's called light gray purple or something online, but the number is 1760. And I got 4 balls of this. It is really, it's mostly light gray with a tiny touch of purple. It's pretty accurate, but maybe a little bit more gray in real life. And then this one is a very bright, kind of red-purple. Pretty much exactly what you're seeing. And I also got 4 balls of this. So in the past I have been hesitant to buy alpaca because to me it has always had a bit of an itch factor, just a little prickle factor. But it always feels so soft to touch. And ever since this winter, I guess it was February or something, when I went to the alpaca farm and I met some alpacas, and they were just so soft, and they were really lovely little creatures, and I've been wanting to try to train myself, I guess, to become less sensitive to alpaca. I used to be very sensitive to wool, and I think it is something that you can train yourself to become, and train your skin to become less sensitive to, because now I can knit with much more rustic yarns that before I would never have been able to wear a sweater, knit out of them, and now I can. So this yarn is really nice. It's very inexpensive, especially Love Knitting had a sale and these were 50% off, so I think they were around $2.50 or $3 a ball. So I figured this was a good time to give it a try. So I got these 2 colorways and I got 4 balls of each. And I have started knitting something with this one that I'll show you in a little bit. I also got 2 lovely packages, like I said, from some viewers. First one came from Erin of Holland Handmade, and she sent me this adorable little sock bag. It has a squared off bottom, and it is fully lined. I'm not going to show you the project yet, but it has a little drawstring here. It's really sweet. And she has a podcast as well. It's called Holland Handmade, I think. And she also has an Etsy shop. So those are both linked in my show notes if you want to take a look. But she had sent me a message to tell me that she had a bunch of little small sock scraps that if I wanted, she would send them to me. And so here they are. It was a full bag. I have already taken out some and used them. But I will show you those also when I show you my blanket later on. But it's really fun to go through those, and that was the first time I was knitting with sock scraps that somebody else has sent me. So I'm trying out some new yarns and cool colors and different from things that I've already used in other projects that were my own scraps. So thank you, Erin. It was really a nice little surprise in that package. I also got a swap package from Mina of the Knitting Expat podcast, and we had talked about doing a swap while she was visiting some family in London so that the shipping would be easier and things like that. So she sent me a sweet little package with also some minis, and I've already taken out some of them and used them. And some really pretty color purple cotton yarn, which I am planning on making some face cloths out of. She sent me some 100% bamboo yarn too, which I'm really interested to see how this knits up. It's really soft. I imagine that it will be quite drapey. But I'm wondering if it will be variegated or gradient or what. So that should be a lot of fun. And she sent me some tea and a little note about the minis. And these cute little sticky pads, which I've been using already. These little guys. I've been making little swatching notes on some of those guys. And she also sent me a project bag. And she has been showing these a little bit on her podcast lately. She is going to be opening an Etsy shop very soon. So she sent me this and said, check it out, see if you like it, and let us know. So here's this lovely bag. It has a project in it right now, which is why it's poking in there. But it does have a nice squared off bottom. And, this fabric is beautiful. I don't think I could have picked a better fabric for myself. I really love it. And it is a very nice size. It has a nice lining with this polka dot fabric. And there's a nice handle of that same fabric as well. And then a little green zipper. So I really love this, and it has been already being used with the project inside that I'll show you in a little bit. So she is like I said, the Knitting Expat podcast. She is Mina Makes on Etsy, but there's nothing on there yet as of today. She's Mina Makes on Instagram and Mina86 on Ravelry. She sent this cute little progress keeper as well. Oops, it's backwards. There we go. So thank you, Mina. That was very sweet. And I look forward to seeing what you have in your shop coming up. Alright, so the last thing that I got this week was 2 balls of the Yaku 416 Superwash, which is a fingering weight merino, and it's more that color. It's like a burgundy red. Sometimes it comes, like, it's not that bright red, and I ordered this directly from the Yaku, the website, which is camarose.dk. CAMAROSE, but you can't order it in the US, or she doesn't ship to the US, but you might be able to send her a message and maybe she would. I'm not sure. I was having a little bit of a problem placing my order, and she was very responsive in customer service, so you could always ask. But this yarn I got 2 balls of this, and this is for a project that I'm working on, which was a custom order project. With that, she also sent a little test sample, whatever this is called, just a color sample of all the colors that they offer, which is really nice because my local yarn store does carry a lot of these colors of her yarn, but not all of them. And so even though the color numbers and names aren't like with this, it's easy enough to figure out which they are on the website. So that's kind of cool. And one thing I was thinking about after seeing this, last week I told you that if I had a yarn in 2 different colors and I was going to be using the 2 different colors in a project, or last week the case was that I swatched with one color even though I would be using a different color for the project. Somebody asked if I always swatch in the same color that I'm going to knit the yarn in, and I was like, no, I don't. I don't think it makes that much of a difference. But looking at this, which is all exactly the same yarn, but it's in different colors, there's a lot of variation in the width or the thickness of some of these yarns, of some of these colors. So that's a little bit surprising. I don't think you're going to be able to pick up on that, really. But, I mean, just looking at it, I can see, this purple one is really skinny compared to this white one, which is quite plump. Even though they're supposedly the same thickness. I don't know how well you can tell. But that's kind of interesting to me, and maybe I will think about changing my ways. It doesn't happen very often that I'm swatching in a different color than I'm knitting with, but like I said, it did happen this week, so we will see. But that is kind of it for what's been going on around here. Just a quick announcement, I guess. There is still plenty of time to join the knit-along that we're having currently. It is called the Spring Lattice, KAL. You can knit either Swedish Spring or the Lattice Shawl, and that will be running until June 5th. You can post your finished projects in the thread on Ravelry, and there's also a chatter thread there. There is, I think, 8 projects so far in the finished projects, but there is a lot of chatter going on in the chatter thread, and I've seen pictures of other people who are working on them as well. And remember, you can post more than one FO picture if you finish more than one shawl. So you can create a separate post for a second or third shawl if you want. So for that, we have a lovely prize, not a knitted project bag. It's a very cute sewn project bag from a lovely viewer, and I will try to insert a picture right here. Otherwise, you will see it at the end of the podcast. And so this prize has been generously donated by a friend of the podcast, and she will be sending it directly, and that will go to a winner picked randomly from the FO thread. There are also a few other prizes, which I will be sharing with you at a later time because they aren't here yet. But yeah, so there's still time. You can share your pictures with hashtag SpringLatticeKAL on Instagram, and you can tag it on Ravelry if you want to, but it's not required. Okay, so let's start with some things that I've been working on this week. I have 3 new projects, like I told you. One of them I did talk about last week, and I showed you the kind of diagram worksheet of how I start building a sweater from scratch, kind of. And that is the Sparrow tunic. I'm knitting this for my mom, and I am knitting it out of onion, pheno organic wool, and nettles. And it is in color number 817. I think. Yes, 817. Which I think is the powder colorway. It's a nice neutral tan color. I have 6 balls of this. I might need to get a 7th one, but we'll see. I'm knitting this in pieces, so there's going to be a right front and a left front, which will have an exposed seam down the center, and then I haven't decided yet if I'm going to knit the back in one piece, which will then be seamed on the sides to the front pieces, or if I will also knit each 2 different back sides with an exposed seam down the center. So far I've just been working on the front. And here's the bottom front. So it starts with a little bit of twisted rib here. You have the moss stitch and stockinette on the side. These markers all indicate where I've done a decrease so that I could match it on the other side. And then you have this 1x1 twisted rib section here for at the waistband, and a bit of garter stitch, and it goes out kind of, a little bit at an angle here. And then I bound up for the underarm. Has a little bit of a rounded neckline here, which I will talk about in the technique tips section. Preview. And then it's quite a skinny strap that you see here, but you have to keep in mind that there will be about 1 inch of twisted rib on either side of this. So there'll be twisted rib around the armband here, and then also around the neck. So that's why this looks pretty skinny. So right now it doesn't look like a whole lot, but there it is. And I have these stitches on a holder in case I need to make them, if I need to make the strap longer or shorter once I attach the back and stuff and look at that. So that was a lot of knitting. I also started knitting the other side, and this one isn't blocked, so that's why it's curling in a lot. So I've gotten up to the waistband of the left front. And I haven't started the back, but I am knitting this on a US size 5, 3.75 millimeter, and these are my Hiya Sharp interchangeable needles, which I really like. They are really sharp, and sometimes, depending on how I'm knitting, I tend to poke the tip of the needle with my finger to push it down, and sometimes I get a little hole in my finger. Not very often, but sometimes it happens. So that's not very fun, but I really like those needles in general. And I'm pretty happy with how that project is coming out. So it's always a little bit, you have to put a little bit of trust in your math and, your gauge and things like that when you knit things in pieces, because you can't try them on, obviously, and I'm also not making this for myself, it's for my mom, so I only have her measurements. I don't have her body here with me to hold things up to and stuff like that, so it's a little bit of cross your fingers, hope it works, but it should work because I did the math for it and swatched well, so hopefully. Alright, so the second thing I cast on this week is living in my project bag from Mina, and I decided to cast on, well, first I swatched. So last time I showed you like a huge swatch that I had done in some blue yarn, which was the swatch for that sparrow tunic. This is more of a normal size swatch for me. And you can see it's really nice and drapey. And it's really soft. And I do a little garter stitch edge on all sides so that it doesn't curl too much, because I find that's easier to measure. And this is washed and blocked as well, so you can see that the stitches look nice and even, which is what you want. The stitches in the project, however, do not look nice and even, but they will once they're blocked. I know because I've seen the swatch. So I am knitting the water lily. I'm doing a real water lily and not my modifications like I made last time. So this is the water lily, which is a short sleeve top by Megan Fernandez, and it was in Pom Pom Quarterly. And this is how much I have so far. This is rolling up, but it won't roll up when it's finished because it is, okay, whatever. It is a garter stitch edge. And I have about like 11 inches, I think, last time I measured, and I'm going to knit this to probably 15 or 16 inches. Yeah, I'm knitting the smallest size. My gauge is different than the pattern calls for, but I did the math and checked how it would turn out. I have also added some waist shaping because there's no shaping in the pattern, and I've just done basically at the like quarter points on the front and then third points on the back. I have 2 points of increase on the front and 2 points of increase on the back, or decrease, and I've just done two sets of decreases for the front and back, and then I'll do 2 sets of increases as well. Just add a little bit of shaping. And I also did the garter part flat, so I have a little bit of a seam to stitch up here. But I'm on my second ball, and I actually knit the first ball twice, because I started out knitting the second size and then it was just coming out too big, and I think it's because the alpaca is quite drapey and quite loose, and so, like I said, I don't have very much experience knitting with alpaca, but I think that the garment will come out larger than I expect. So I switched to the smaller size, and I'm also knitting this on my Hiya Sharps. But yeah, so I knit almost maybe this much and ripped it out, cast on again, and then knit that much and almost that much again. So you can see in this the stitches really don't look even at all, but that will get fixed with blocking. Here's one of my points of increase and decrease, so you could see there's an increase there, there's a decrease, and a decrease. So that's been fun to work on. The yarn is really nice and soft, and I am excited to wear that. Okay, so the final project that I cast on this week is in this little bag from Erin, and that was what this yarn was for. So I am joining in with the knit along, and I am knitting my Swedish Spring 3.0, and this is how much I have so far. So So I've just started really into the texture part a little bit. But I hope to finish this during the time of the knit-along. I'm not entering for prizes, of course, but it's fun to see you all chatting in the chatter thread and showing your progress and things like that. So that is that. So those are my 3 new works in progress, and then I'll just go quickly through ones that I have shown you for the past weeks. First, I did I don't count this as a finished object, but debatable. I finished one of my Salus socks, which is a free pattern on Ravelry. It's a toe-up pattern, but I did it top-down. I did a heel flap and gusset instead of the heel that it called for in the pattern, and I also did 1 inch of 1x1 rib instead of what it was in the pattern. But I'm really happy with how that turned out, and this one is blocked. I haven't started the second one. Hopefully I will soon. We'll see. I did work a tiny bit on my loose top, which is also a pattern from Pom Pom Quarterly. And I'll just show you my knit from the Progress Keeper up. So I have not very much, still not very much, growing slowly for this top. This also has a garter stitch edge and will lie flat when I block it, but is curling up right now. So I really do want to work on this more, but it's just not the first thing that I grab to work on. And finally, I did put a couple of new hexagons on my honeycomb blanket. This pattern is called Hexagon How To, and it's by, I think her name is Lucy, I'm not sure, on Attic 24. You can find it on Ravelry. And here it is. So I added some new hexagons from some of the minis that Erin and Nina sent to me. Here's one from Erin, this one too. This one's new. This is from Mina. It's a nice silk. I think it's a silk merino base. It's quite shiny. This one's new. This one's new. And this one as well. Just a couple new ones. This one is also. You can see for some of these, like this one, I started doing it in the purple and then I ran out, so I just did the last part in a different color. I'm fine with that. I think it's cool. So here it is. Growing slowly but surely, but I really like this project, and I really like weaving in the ends as I go, because it can be like this. It can sit on my couch. It sits on the back of my couch usually, and there's no ends sticking off, and it's totally finished as this. Obviously it's going to get a lot bigger, but there's no risk of needles falling out or, yeah, whatever, things like that. And I did actually block this week. I had talked a little bit last week. I was a little bit afraid to wash it because I thought that maybe some of the yarn might bleed into the white part. So when I was knitting the new circles of the color part this week, I actually soaked those separately and checked in to see if they had bled at all, and they hadn't. So then I added the white border, but I also just washed the rest of it. So it's part of it, this like main center part, minus some of these edge ones, is blocked. And it is much drapier and just, it's really satisfying to be blocked. So I am looking forward to this continuing to grow, and until then it will just be a little piece of fabric on my couch. So the last thing that I worked on this week was my Tea Time sampler, or Tea Time, I don't think it's called a sampler, my Tea Time cross stitch, and I just did a little bit on this, so I'll show you. I started doing the outer border part, and so I've just done 2 little teacups and this little cookie or something, and I've started, I think it's going to be a leaf. You can see how I have it rolled up this week with the clips, and I keep my needle there when it's not being used. And I'll just show you the back. Grandma. I'll show you the back so you can see what it looks like. Pretty good. Not perfect, but that's about as good as it gets for me. So that is fun, and I kind of take that out just when, like, if I need to think about my knitting a little bit more, like I'm at a transition point or at a point where I need to decide, like, do I need to rip back a little bit, or, you know, what's going on? Like with this sparrow, I was trying to decide. I needed to put it down for a little bit so I could think about it. Then I pick up the cross stitch project. So that's it for what I've been working on this week. A little bit more than normal because I was here alone for a lot of the week. But yeah, it was fun. So I wanted to share with you a technique tip that I used for the first time this week, and I'm really happy with how it came out. So I wanted to share it with you because I know that some of you have been interested in learning some more tips for good finishing techniques and how to make your projects just look more polished. So this is a technique tip that I first saw on Instagram, and then I followed the link to her, I guess it's a blog, but it's Coco Knits, and it's a tutorial for how to do a biased bind off. This is good for necklines, especially, which is what I've used it for in this case. So you can see here on this neckline, which is going to be, you know, like this, that it has a nice smooth edge for the most part. There's like some tiny little bumps. That's because I'm doing it in garter stitch, but it's really smooth in general. It's pretty gradual and smooth. It's not stair-stepped. So I drew a little picture of this, so hopefully it could help illustrate it, and it's on my show notes, but I'll just show you. A lot of times when you are binding off for a neckline, you might just, you know, bind off 4 stitches or something, and then knit another row, and then on the next row, you bind off 4 more stitches, knit the rest of that row, bind off, you know, 3, or you keep going to try to make it sort of a smooth and gradual neckline. But if you do it that way, without making any adjustments, you'll get kind of a stair step like this. So these little circles are like where the bind off stitches are. And you don't really want that. What you want is more of a smooth bind off like this one. And that is what I have tried to accomplish here, a smooth edge. I will be picking up these stitches along the edge to add the 1 inch of ribbing like I mentioned before. But I didn't want there to be stair steps anyway, because you want it to be smooth. So I would definitely recommend checking out this tutorial. It's really simple. It's called Coco Knits. Basically what you do is you just, when you are on the wrong side and you get to the neck edge, you slip the last stitch, flip it over to the right side, slip the first 2 stitches before you start binding off. And that leaves you with a smooth edge rather than the stair step. So she has nice pictures on her website, and I would definitely recommend checking it out if you are interested in having a smooth neckline like that. So that is the technique tip for this week, and I did have one question that I was going to answer. Speaking of the question section, I really enjoyed reading all of the responses from last week's question about whether or not you are a public or private knitter. I could definitely relate to many of them, and I just found it really, really interesting to hear what people had to say about that. So if you haven't read that, I would recommend checking out the discussion thread for episode 16. This week, I think it was Lisa in New Zealand asked, you can see her full question on Ravelry or on the show notes, but she said she noticed that a lot of the accessories that I knit are in neutrals and sweaters are in brighter colors. And she wondered if that was true or if maybe it was just what I've been knitting lately. I don't think that is so much true for me. I think I tend to knit a bit of both, but I think the bigger question here was, what balance do you take between knitting with colors that are just really fun to knit with and knitting in colors that you will actually wear in your wardrobe, whether or not that's neutrals or maybe you wear bright colors. So personally, I've been trying lately to be a little bit more conscious about colors that I'm choosing, because I'm definitely drawn to colorful colors instead of just neutrals, I guess you could say. But I also like gray a lot. I don't like brown very much at all, so I don't knit with brown. I think this is the closest to brown that I knit with, and it's really close to gray also. It's like a warmer gray brown. But I never knit with dark brown. So in terms of neutrals, I think I would tend to pick grays, all ranges of gray, cream sometimes, and black sometimes. But for colors, I tend to pick whatever color I want, whatever color appeals to me. I have been thinking more, though, a lot about, trying to pick colors that I think I would actually wear. And I do try to pick patterns that I think I'll actually wear. So I think that for me tends to be more simple things. Simple construction rather than some crazy constructed cardigan or something. I try to pick something that either I have something similar in my wardrobe maybe that I know that or something that I've worn a lot in the past that's kind of more of a classic shape. Just like, a simple button-down cardigan or something like that. Or for accessories, I would always wear a shawl. Hats are a little trickier for me because of curly hair. But, yeah, I don't know. I have a gray coat and I have a black coat, so then I feel like I can pick a colorful shawl to wear with those, or colorful accessories. But then maybe sometimes I try to have a neutral colored hat, so then I could wear a colorful shawl or something like that. But I don't know. For me, I think the biggest thing is that I have realized that I don't like knitting very much with really variegated yarn. Sometimes I do. For example, I think last week or something, I showed you the shawl that I finished out of the Bull and Vine yarn, which was in her Neptunia colorway, which is a beautiful spring greens and turquoise and blues and a little bit of pink and purple and also some cream. And I really enjoyed knitting with that. But I paired it with a cream. So I knit the lace part of that shawl in a cream. It wasn't all just totally variegated. And it was also a really simple pattern. So for me, it's more, rather than how bright or colorful the colors are, it's more about picking a pattern that really does well with the yarn so that it's not crazy yarn matched with crazy pattern. I think for me, I prefer to have pattern with tonal or solid yarn and maybe garter stitch, like in the other shawl that I showed last week, garter stitch with variegated yarn or something. But in general, even though I might be drawn to variegated yarns, I tend not to buy them because I know that I'm not as interested in how they knit up. So for example, like this sock, this is pretty much solid, and I like it in a solid yarn because I think it just shows the pattern. I would never knit this in a variegated yarn. I know a lot of people would, but I wouldn't. Same with the water lily. Like, I want that to be about the pattern, not about the yarn as much. So I pick a yarn that will add to the pattern, like it will look nice with the pattern, but you're not going to look at it, you're not going to look at that top and the first thing you say is like, whoa, look at that crazy yarn. You're going to look at the top and you're going to say, wow, that's a really nice top, I like the lace detail. Oh, and it's also in a really nice, it has a really nice fabric that's made from the nice yarn. But like with, and even with this, you can see that it's mostly solid yarns that I'm using, solid colors, but there are some really fun little pops of variegated. This is the Woolen Vine. You know, so it's not all solid, but for me, in order to make this project work for my brain and my aesthetic, I guess, is that I had to have the white border in there so that each little pop of color is separated. So I would like to say that I pick colors that I know I wear, but sometimes that doesn't happen. Sometimes it is that I pick a yarn because I just really love the color. But then I really, I guess, try to be more conscious of what pattern I'm using. But I think in general, I almost always knit with solid or slightly tonal yarn. And that's what I have definitely grown into that more. When I started out knitting, I was really all about the self-striping socks and you know, exciting colors that way, like cool things that yarn could do, because I think I wasn't as developed in, I didn't feel as confident with my skills to do complex patterns, or even simple patterns that made it look complex, so I relied more on the yarn to do the, like, make it look cool and be entertaining and fun and engaging, but I think now I've sort of transitioned a little bit more into picking yarn that works well and works nicely with the pattern, but having the main focus be on the actual pattern and the project and having it fit well and look nice. So hopefully that answers your question. I don't have a question for you this week. I'm still just enjoying reading the answers from last week's question about public versus private knitter. And so maybe there will be a new one next week. But also upcoming, I'm just going to put this in as a little teaser. This weekend, a new shawl design came to me, so I was sitting on the couch knitting, and it literally just came to me, and I was like, this has to be a shawl. And so I drew out a sketch, and I haven't knit anything yet, but I will be starting that shortly. And this won't be coming out for a while, but it's very exciting, and I look forward to sharing that with you when I can. I also wanted to say that Isabel from the Fluffy Fibers podcast, she has a beautiful new shawl pattern that she released last week, I think. I think it's called Verdure or something like that. It's French. She said how to pronounce it in her most recent podcast, and she said you could pronounce it in the French or the English way, but I don't quite remember what it's called. But her name is Isabel, and she is Fluffy Fibers on Ravelry, I believe. And it is a beautiful, lightly crescent-shaped shawl, and it has an applied border, a lace border that's sort of like a leaf motif on the edge, and it's really beautiful, and I will definitely be knitting that in the future. So that's what's upcoming for me, and I look forward to seeing more of your finished shawls this week on the Ravelry group. There's still plenty of time to join if you're interested. And I think that's it. So I hope you have a great week and that you have lots of time for knitting and doing whatever other crafts you enjoy. Until next week, happy knitting. Bye.